For over 6 decades, the Tibetan people have endured immense suffering under Chinese rule. Our peaceful nation was invaded in 1950, shattering our independence and way of life. Since then, we have faced relentless oppression, cultural assimilation, and human rights violations. Despite these hardships, the Tibetan spirit remains unbroken. We continue to strive for freedom and the preservation of our unique culture and identity. Our struggle is not one of hatred or violence, but of resilience and hope. We seek a future where Tibetans can live in peace and dignity within our own homeland. The Chinese government's policies have had a devastating impact on Tibetan culture, religion, and language. Monasteries have been destroyed and monks and nuns have been persecuted. The Tibetan language has been marginalized in education and public life. Traditional nomadic ways of life have been disrupted, leading to environmental degradation and social upheaval. Despite facing these immense challenges, the Tibetan people have never given up hope. We continue to resist oppression and strive for a future where our rights are respected and our culture can flourish once more. In the face of these challenges, I have consistently advocated for a peaceful resolution through dialogue and reconciliation. This approach, known as the Middle Way, seeks genuine autonomy for Tibet within the framework of the People's Republic of China. It is a pragmatic and compassionate approach that recognizes the interconnectedness of our world and the importance of finding mutually beneficial solutions. The Middle Way is not about seeking vengeance or separation, but about securing a future where Tibetans can thrive within China, living in harmony and mutual respect. The Middle Way is rooted in the fundamental Buddhist principles of non-violence and compassion. It is a path that seeks to uphold the dignity and rights of all beings, including both Tibetans and Chinese. By engaging in dialogue and finding common ground, we can build a future where both our cultures can coexist and flourish. This approach requires understanding, empathy, and a willingness to compromise from both sides. It is a challenging path, but I firmly believe it is the only way to achieve a lasting and just solution for Tibet. While some advocate for full independence for Tibet, the geopolitical realities of today's world make this goal exceedingly difficult to achieve. China is a global superpower with a firm grip on Tibet. A unilateral declaration of independence would likely lead to further suffering and bloodshed for the Tibetan people. The Middle Way, therefore, represents a pragmatic approach that acknowledges these realities while still striving for meaningful autonomy and the preservation of our culture. It is essential to understand that the Middle Way is not about giving up on our aspirations for freedom. It is about recognizing that true freedom can only be achieved through peaceful means, and that a negotiated solution is the most viable path to securing a future where Tibetans can govern their own affairs and preserve their unique identity. The Middle Way is a testament to the resilience and pragmatism of the Tibetan people, a testament to our unwavering commitment to peace and nonviolence, even in the face of oppression. Since the 1970s, there have been numerous attempts to engage in dialogue between the Tibetan government in exile and the Chinese government. These efforts have been met with mixed results, characterized by periods of hope and progress followed by setbacks and frustration. Despite these challenges, we remain committed to dialogue as the only viable path towards a peaceful resolution. The first direct contacts between the Tibetan government in exile and China took place in the late 1970s, raising hopes for a breakthrough. However, these initial talks failed to produce concrete results. In the 1980s and 1990s, further rounds of dialogue took place, but progress remained elusive. The Chinese government's unwillingness to address the core issues of Tibetan autonomy and human rights has been a major stumbling block. Despite these setbacks, we continue to believe that dialogue is essential and remain open to engaging with the Chinese government in a spirit of sincerity and compromise. The Chinese government has consistently rejected the Middle Way, viewing it as a veiled attempt at separatism. They maintain that Tibet is an integral part of China and that any discussion of autonomy is unacceptable. Beijing's policies towards Tibet are driven by a combination of factors, including strategic considerations, economic interests, and a deep-seated fear of Tibetan cultural and religious identity. China's economic interests in Tibet are vast, encompassing its mineral resources, hydropower potential, and strategic location as a gateway to South Asia. The Chinese government has invested heavily in infrastructure projects in Tibet, including roads, railways, and airports, to facilitate economic development and exert greater control over the region. These projects, however, have often come at the expense of the Tibetan environment and have primarily benefited Chinese migrants rather than the local Tibetan population. Within Tibet, the middle way approach enjoys widespread support. Tibetans from all walks of life, nomads, farmers, intellectuals, and monks, see it as the most realistic and viable path towards achieving genuine autonomy and preserving their cultural identity. Despite facing immense pressure and risks, Tibetans continue to express their support for the middle way through peaceful protests, acts of defiance, and unwavering adherence to their cultural and religious traditions. The Tibetan diaspora, scattered across the globe, also plays a crucial role in amplifying the voices of those inside Tibet. Through advocacy, awareness campaigns, and cultural preservation efforts, the diaspora ensures that the Tibetan struggle remains in the global spotlight. The diaspora serves as a vital link between Tibet and the international community, mobilizing support for the middle way and holding China accountable for its actions in Tibet. The Tibetan spirit endures. A movement's unwavering momentum. Despite decades of oppression, the Tibetan freedom movement continues to gain momentum. Around the world, people of conscience are raising their voices in support of Tibet, calling for an end to China's human rights abuses and a peaceful resolution to the conflict. From grassroots activists to political leaders, the international community is increasingly recognizing the legitimacy of the Tibetan struggle and the importance of supporting the middle way. International pressure has played a crucial role in bringing attention to the Tibetan issue and pushing for dialogue between China and the Tibetan leadership. Governments, parliaments, and international organizations have passed resolutions condemning China's human rights record in Tibet and calling for a peaceful resolution to the conflict. While China often dismisses international criticism as interference in its internal affairs, the sustained pressure from the global community remains a vital source of support for the Tibetan people. The legacy continues. The 15th Dalai Lama's reincarnation. The issue of my reincarnation is of paramount importance to the Tibetan people. As a Buddhist leader, I believe that the process of reincarnation is a spiritual matter that should be free from political interference. However, the Chinese government has declared its intention to control the selection of my successor. A move widely seen as an attempt to further consolidate its control over Tibet and undermine Tibetan Buddhism. The Tibetan people have a deep reverence for the institution of the Dalai Lama, who is seen as both the spiritual and temporal leader of Tibet. The Dalai Lama's reincarnation is a sacred process guided by centuries-old traditions and rituals. Any attempt by the Chinese government to interfere in this process would be a grave violation of Tibetan religious freedom and would be met with strong resistance from the Tibetan people. A longing for return. Will the Dalai Lama see Tibet again? It is my heartfelt wish to return to Tibet in my lifetime. I long to see the faces of my people, to walk the streets of Lhasa and to pay my respects at the Jokang Temple. However, my return is contingent upon the Chinese government creating the necessary conditions for a meaningful dialogue and demonstrating a genuine commitment to resolving the Tibetan issue peacefully. The Tibetan people yearn for my return, seeing it as a beacon of hope and a symbol of their aspirations for freedom and self-determination. My presence in Tibet would serve as a catalyst for healing and reconciliation, paving the way for a brighter future for all Tibetans. However, I remain committed to the principles of nonviolence and dialogue, and will not return to Tibet under conditions that could jeopardize the safety and well-being of my people. A global call for justice supporting Tibet's middle way. The Tibetan struggle is a struggle for justice, freedom, and the preservation of a unique culture and way of life. It is a struggle that transcends borders and resonates with people of conscience around the world. The international community has a moral obligation to stand in solidarity with the Tibetan people and to support their right to self-determination. By supporting the middle way approach, the international community can play a constructive role in facilitating a peaceful resolution to the Tibetan issue. This includes urging the Chinese government to engage in meaningful dialogue with the Tibetan leadership, to respect the human rights of the Tibetan people, and to allow Tibetans to govern their own affairs within the framework of the Chinese constitution. The Tibetan struggle is a reminder that the pursuit of justice and freedom is a universal aspiration and that we must never remain silent in the face of oppression.